Within this section, we're going to talk about authorization and authentication methods available within Microsoft Azure. In this section, you will be introduced to Azure Identity, Access and Security Services and Tools. You'll learn about directory service in Azure, authentication methods, and access control. You'll also cover things like Zero Trust and Defense in Depth and how they keep your cloud safer. You'll wrap up with an introduction to Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Azure Active Directory is a directory service that enables you to sign in, access both Microsoft Cloud applications and cloud applications that you develop. Azure Active Directory can also help you maintain your on-premises Active Directory deployment. For on-premises environments, Active Directory running on Windows Server provides an identity and access management service that's managed by your organization. Azure Active Directory is Microsoft cloud-based identity and access management service. With Azure AD, you control identities, but with Microsoft ensures that the service is available globally. So if you're worked with Active Directory, Azure AD will be familiar to you. When you secure identities on-premises with Active Directory, Microsoft doesn't monitor sign-in attempts. But when you connect Active Directory with Azure AD, Microsoft can help protect you by detecting suspicious sign-in attempts at no extra cost. For example, Azure AD can detect sign-in attempts from unexpected locations and devices. Azure AD provides services such as authentication. This includes verifying identity, access applications and resources. It also includes providing functionalities such as self-access, a self-service password reset, multi-factor authentication, a custom list of banned password, and smart lockout services. Additionally, we can also provide single sign-on. Single sign-on enables you to remember only one username and one password to access multiple applications. A single sign-on identity is tied to a user, which simplifies the security model as users change roles or leave an organization. Access modifications are tied to an identity, which greatly reduces the effort needed to change or disable accounts. Application management. You can manage your cloud and on-premises apps by using Azure AD. Features like application proxies, SaaS apps, the My Apps portal, and single sign-on provider is a better user experience. Device management, along with your account for individual people, Azure AD supports the registration of devices. Registration enables devices to be managed through tools like Microsoft Intune. It also allows for device-based conditional access policies to restrict access attempts to only those incoming from known devices, regardless of the request of the user account. Azure AD with your on-premises AD is using Azure AD Connect. Azure AD Connect synchronizes user identity between on-premises, Active Directory, and Azure AD. Azure AD Connect synchronizes changes between both identity systems, so you can use features such as SSO, multi-factor authentication, self-service passwords, reset under both systems. Authentication identifies the person or service seeking access to a resource, requests a legitimate access credentials, basis for creating security identities and access controls, whereas authorization determines the authentication's person or service's level of access, defines which data they can access and what they can do with it. So those are some of the differences between authentication and authorization, and this will be a question that will be on the test. Multi-factor authentication is the process of prompting a user for extra form of identification during the sign-on process. MFA helps protect against password compromise in situations where the password was compromised but the second factor wasn't. Think about you sign into a website, email, or online services after entering your username and password. Have you ever needed to enter a code that was sent to your phone? If so, you use multi-factor authentication to sign on. Multi-factor authentication provides additional security for identities by requiring two or more elements to fully authenticate. These elements fall into three categories. Something the user knows, this might be a challenge question. Something the user has, this might be a code that is sent to the user's mobile phone. Something that the user is, this is typically some sort of biometric property such as a fingerprint or face scan. Azure Active Directory authentication is Microsoft's service that provides multi-factor authentication capabilities. Azure AD multi-factor authentication enables users to choose an additional form of authentication during a sign-on, such as a personal phone call or the mobile application notification, just to name a few of them. An external identity is a person, device, service that is outside of your organization. Azure AD external identities refers to all the ways you can securely interact with users outside of your organization. If you want to collaborate with partners, distributors, suppliers, or vendors, you can share your resources and define how your internal users can access external organizations. If you're a developer creating consumer-facing apps, you can manage your customers' identity experiences. External identities may sound similar to single sign-on. With external identities, external users can bring their own identity. So let's give an example. You got a Gmail and you want to interact with an organization. Maybe you are a freelancer. You can now do that without having to acquire a license. You can use your own license that you have from Google already, right? Whether they have a corporate government issued identity or unmanaged social identity like Google, Facebook, they can use their own credentials to sign in. The external user's identity provider manages their identity, and you manage the access to your applications with Azure AD, Azure AD B2C to keep your resources protected. Really cool feature. Business to business collaboration. Collaborate with external users by letting them use their preferred identity to sign into your Microsoft application or enterprise application. B2B collaboration users are represented in your directory typically as guest users. B2B Connect establishes a mutual two-way trust with another Azure AD organization for seamless collaboration. B2B Direct Connects currently supports Teams shared channels, enable external users to access your resources from within their home instance of Teams. B2B Direct Connect users aren't represented in your directory, but they are visible from within Teams shared channel and can be monitored in Teams Admin Center reports. Azure AD Business to Consumer publish modern SaaS application and custom development applications, right? To customers and while using Azure AD B2C identity for access management. Conditional access is a tool that Azure Active Directory uses to allow or deny access to resources based on identity signals. These signals include who the user is, where the user is, and what devices the user requesting access from. Conditional access helps IT administrators empower users to be productive wherever. Protect our organization assets. Conditional access provides a more granular multi-factor authentication experience for users. For example, a user might not be challenged for a second authentication factor if they are at a known location. However, they might be challenged for a second authentication factor if their sign-on signals are unusual or they are within an unexpected location. During sign-on or sign-in, conditional access collects signals from the users, makes decisions based on those signals, and then enforces that decision by allowing or denying the access request or challenging for multi-factor authentication response. The following diagram illustrates the flow that you will have to go through. Conditional access is used when you need to require multi-factor authentication to access an application depending on the user's requester's role, location, or network. So let's go over an example, right? You could require MFA for an administrator, but not regular users, or for people connecting from outside the corporate network. Require access to services only through approved client applications. For example, you can limit which email application able to connect to your email service. Require users to access your application only from managed devices. A managed device is a device that meets your standards from security and compliances. Block access from untrusted sources, such as access from unknown and unexpected locations, and so many other features that you can do. When you have multiple IT and engineering teams, how can you control the access they have to resources in your cloud environment? The principle of least privilege says you should only grant access up to the level needed to complete a task. If you can only read access to a storage blob, then you should only be granted access to read to that storage blob. Write access to that blob shouldn't be granted, nor should read access to any other storage blobs. It's a good security process to follow. However, managing that level of permissions for an entire team will become tedious, Instead of defining the details and access requirements for each individual, and then updating access requirement when new resources are created or new people join the team, Azure enables you to control access through Azure Role-Based Access, RBAC for short. Zero Trust is a security model that assumes the worst case scenario and protects the resource with that expectation. Zero Trust assumes breach at the outset and then verifies each request as though it originated from an uncontrolled network. Today, organizations need a new security model that effectively adapts to the complexity of the modern environment, embraces the mobile workforce, and protects people, devices, applications, and data wherever they're located. To address this new world of computing, Microsoft highly recommends Zero Trust security model, which is based on these guiding principles. Verify explicitly. Always authenticate and authorize based on all available data points. Use least privileged access. Limit users' access with just-in-time and just enough access. Risk-based adaptive policies and data protection. Assume breach. Minimize the blast radius and segment access. Verify end-to-end encryption. Use analytics to get visibility, drive detection, and improve defenses. The objective of defense in depth is to protect information and prevent it from being stolen by those who aren't authorized to access it. A defense in-depth strategy uses a series of mechanisms to show the advance of attack that aims at acquiring unauthorized access to data. Here is a brief overview of the role of each layer. The physical security layer is the first line of defense to protect computing hardware in the data center. The identity access layer controls access to the infrastructure and changes control. The perimeter layers use distributable denial of service DDoS protection to filter out large-scale attacks before they can cause denial of services for users. The network layer limits communication between resources through segmentation and access controls. The compute layer secures access to the virtual machines. The application layer helps ensure the applications are secure and free from security vulnerabilities. The data layer controls the access to business and consumer data that you need to protect. Defender for Cloud is a monitoring tool for security posture management and threat protection. It monitors your cloud, on-premises, hybrid, and multi-cloud environments to provide guidance and notifications aimed at strengthening your security posture. Defender for Cloud provides the tools needed to harden your resources, track your security posture, protect against cybersecurity attacks, and streamline security management. Deployments of Defender for Cloud is easy and it's already native integrated to Azure. Because Defender Cloud is an Azure native service, many Azure services are monitored and protected without needing any deployment. However, you also have an on-premises data centers, or you also operate in other cloud environments. Microsoft services may not give you a complete picture of your security situation. So when necessary, Defender for Cloud can automatically deploy log analytics agents to gather security-related data from Azure machines. Deployment is handled directly for hybrid and multi-cloud environments. Microsoft Defender plans and are executed to non-Azure machines with the help of Azure Arc. Cloud security posture management features are extended to multi-cloud machines without the need of any agents. You made it to the end of part 2. So what did we learn? We learned all about Azure Identity, Access, and security services and tools. We also covered authentication methods, including which ones are more secure. Additionally, we learned about restricting access based on role to help you create a more secure environment, and we learned about the defense in depth and zero trust models. So I can't wait to see you in part 3 of this Microsoft Fundamentals, or better known as AZ-900 certification.